Let's move on to your points leader, Kyle Larson, who is now ahead in the championship entering the month of May, where he is ready to do the double Indy 500 and the Coke 600. Interesting scenario. I don't know, and I can have this fact checked, but I don't think we've had a points leader in either of those series attempt to do the double. But Kyle Larson is going to get some help with him on that front. Kevin Harvick coming in to do the All-Star weekend. But I want to talk about the double a little bit because only so many people have successfully finished this race. Fewer have actually won one of these races. So entering the month of May with a points lead, he's got a fast McLaren, and he knows he can win almost any race. Starting with you, Joe, do we think that this is going to be a big boost of confidence for Mr. Larson, or what do we think?
He has to be feeling really confident with the way he got going on. The McLaren Chevrolets at IndyCar, they are fast, always competitive under this current ownership. Ignore the McLaren that Fernando Alonso had. That's a different type of McLaren. But he knows he puts together 4 good laps. He's going to be in the race, and I think he's going to be up towards the front. He just looks very comfortable in that car. Coca-Cola 600, Hendrick Motorsports, they have to be one of the favorites. I think he will love to get that win. The big thing for him is just focusing on the conditioning, I feel. Where in the past, where you had John Reddy, Kurt Busch, Tony Stewart, a lot of times, especially Tony Stewart, you got to remember, he was doing this pretty early on in his career before the championships all started coming in. Kurt Busch did a little later on. Kyle Larson still one of the prime drivers, great equipment on both sides. I think he's going to have a phenomenal month of May, and I think he's going to be really drawing a lot of attention to fans to both races, seeing what he could do.
You know, if anybody can win the double, pull off both of these wins, it would be Kyle Larson. I don't expect him to, because like you mentioned, Jackson, you know, just finishing 1,100 miles has only been done once, and Tony Stewart accomplishing that in 2001, I believe. I know he tried it in 99 as well, but you know, Kurt Busch, you know, had a very strong run at the Indianapolis 500, but then he had an engine failure at Charlotte. So, you know, you just never know what's going to happen in this sport, and, you know, just trying to pull off the logistics of it is challenging enough. Trying to win both races, I mean, that would be absolutely incredible. But I gotta wonder if Larson does win the 500, you know, do they go through all the pomp and circumstance of the winners' traditions and celebration and everything? Because he's got to get on that jet over to Concord, North Carolina, to compete in the 600-mile race right after that. So that would be a very interesting scenario to try to follow. Like you mentioned, we're hearing that Kevin Harvick's going to come back to practice and qualify his All-Star Weekend car, which was very surprising to me. I heard Harvick on Dale Jr.'s podcast at the end of last year, seeming to swear, but he would never get back in a Cup car, and yet it's pretty funny how quickly things can change sometimes, I suppose. But I thought he and Dale both were saying we'll never even touch a Cup car again, but we'll see what comes of this year. It's an interesting backup plan. I assume if Larson somehow gets stuck in Indianapolis, you know, Harvick, I guess, would be All-Star eligible as well with his championships now. But I think about it, maybe he didn't win a race last year. I don't know what his status would be there, but yeah, I mean, I think just drawing it all back to Larson, I think that, you know, there's obviously a lot that's going to go into this double attempt here. And I think that, you know, you look at how he's running in the Cup Series right now versus, you know, where people expect him to be at Indianapolis. I think he absolutely has the opportunity to go out and win one, perhaps even both of these races with how he's driving.
It's interesting you mentioned the logistics, and obviously we've never had a winner of either of the guys attempting the double here. But in my head, just imagining the kind of euphoria that would be, not just with Kyle Larson, but at Charlotte, as you know, you've got a helicopter coming in with your defending Indy 500 winner. If Charlotte, I'm convinced NASCAR would have to push that back like 30, 45 minutes just to go through that, because there's no way you're missing the opportunity to have, like, you know, a defending Indy 500 winner go in and do your race, I think. But
yeah, well, you know, I'm trying to think back. I know Parker Kligerman was on standby for Kurt when he did it 10 years ago, but Kurt also didn't win the race. So, you know, I mean, it would be totally unprecedented. I wouldn't blame NASCAR at all. Normally, I'd be of the mindset, you know, you got to hold firm to, you know, your start time and everything that you've got planned. But I think for such a massive situation like that, I would not put it past them to to do something like that. So yeah, I mean, the logistics are going to be very interesting, especially given what's happened the last 2 years, if we get a late caution that turns into a red flag to try to guarantee a green flag finish, and Kurt went through that as well in 2014 because the race had finished under caution each of the last 4 years before that. Fortunately for him, we had a restart inside 10 to go and got a throwing battle between Hunter Ray and Castor Neves for the win that year. But I've got to imagine Larson's probably not going to be too happy if they red flagged the race 3 times and been closing 20 laps or so. So again, just trying to figure out the logistics of all this is difficult enough. Going out and finishing both races, let alone winning them, I'm not going to predict that. But then again, if anybody can do it, it's him.
Yeah, and I think going back to that red flag thing, I think when you have a guy like Kyle Larson who's got places to be, you might actually approach the rules differently like that. And I think we've had talks about changing that and having a concrete, rule of basically how far in until you can throw a red flag and next lap finishes it. Does this sound familiar, NASCAR Cup guys?
As long as it doesn't become the Indianapolis 510,
exactly.
I will begrudgingly take it. I wish that we would call the race, a yellow flag is a yellow, a red is a red, no matter what lap it happens on. But at the bare minimum, the race ended at mile 500 last year, and I'm thankful for that.
Exactly. So Kyle Larson joins an interesting group of guys here: Kurt Busch, Robbie Gordon, Tony Stewart, Davy Jones, John Andretti, who first attempted it back in 1994. This is the 30th anniversary. It will be the 30th anniversary of that attempt. However, no driver who's ever tried to do double duty has won even half of those legs. So the question for both you guys, how confident are you that he could win one of these races, and if not both?
I don't expect him to win both. I'm not going to put it past him either, but he can absolutely win the Coca-Cola 600. There's no doubt about that one. And again, I think of how well Kurt did in 2014. The talent is certainly there. I'm not going to put him. He's not going to be my pick a winner. I think I've got to ride with Elio based on, again, funny how this roundtable episode keeps coming back up here, but I think I got to keep rolling with Elio at this point in terms of my pick. But I would not be surprised if a lot of fans pick him. I would not be surprised if there's a lot of people in the media that maybe take a look at how he did in the test, just the other week. And, we'll see when, it comes time for practice and qualifying how fast he is. I have no doubt in his ability to make the race. Like you mentioned, Joe, this is not going to be a Fernando Alonso McLaren situation where, we see a shock bump from the field here. Larson, I think, you can never, there are no guarantees in Indianapolis, but I would be 99.9% certain that he doesn't have to worry about that. He's probably going to be contender for a top 3 or top 4 row starting spot here, and from there the sky's the limit. But I'd be confident in saying he can win one of the races. If he shocks the world and wins the Indy 500, I think there might be a kind of a cloud 9 experience here, and I don't know if his full attention or focus is going to be on the following 600 miles at his day job, so to speak. And then if he, has a solid run in excuse me, can't talk tonight here. If he has a solid run at Indianapolis, I think that, he'll get on the plane to Charlotte and, go do what he's used to doing in, the series that he's most comfortable in. And, could maybe, again, he's liable to win on any mile and a half track in that 5 car, so I would not put the Coke 600 past him. So bottom line is I think he could get one. I would still be very surprised, as talented as Kyle Larson is, be very surprised if he could pull the double off and actually win both of them.
Kyle Larson has won the Coca-Cola 600 2021, so he knows he could win that as long as there's no issues with the car, nothing goes wrong, he doesn't get caught up in a crash. He has the confidence he could go out there, get the win. I do think it'll be interesting, though. I never thought of it. You're going through all the emotion of you just won the Indy 500, you got the wreath, the Brock Warner trophy, the milk, all that, and then all of a sudden, hey, you got to get on a helicopter. Hurry, hurry, hurry. I do think NASCAR would at least say, hey, we got the Indy 500 winner coming. We're going to postpone 30 minutes to accommodate him. But that would be such a huge distraction. I just won the Indy 500. Now I'm going to race another 600 miles. So I think Kyle Larson at the Indy 500, he has the advantage that this is the one race he's going to put everything into. If he gets a good finish, he's going to still be a contender for the win at the Coca-Cola 600. If somehow Kyle Larson pulls off this huge upset, which we've seen drivers like Juan Pablo Montoya, first time come in, get the win. Helio Castroneves did that. Kyle Larson was the most talented drivers, a lot of folks say, in the world. I would say he could be up there with those two drivers and win it on his rookie attempt. It's going to be a challenge, though, because this is his first time ever compared to those two. They've been in IndyCar.
Right.
But I think he has the potential to just is such a challenge. But I think overall, he's for sure going to be considered a pick-a-winner pick for the Coca-Cola 600.
Well, and Joe, just to bounce off of that real quick, the two that you mentioned, Montoya and Castroneves, they had the advantage of experienced kart teams slowly trickling back into the IRL and the Indianapolis 500. I think everybody expected Ganassi and Penske in those 2 years to dominate in the way that he did, or they did rather. Hendrick's support with McLaren, I'm by no means is Larson, disadvantaged in terms of his equipment, but I don't know that he has that much of an advantage going for him as those two did when. And again, were they really rookies in that situation? Kyle Larson, again, is incredibly talented, but this is going to be his first IndyCar Series race of any kind. So, I don't know that that's necessarily the greatest one-on-one comparison here, but it does show that the track is capable of producing first-time winners in their first attempt, and maybe Larson will join that list. Who knows? I
believe last rookie to win it was Alexander Rossi, correct? In 2016. Yeah. I mean, I know again more experience and everything, but it'll be interesting to see. The big thing I think Kyle Larson, if he doesn't win, he'll probably make a mistake and crash just because he's trying too hard. The one thing I'm curious about too, if we get a situation, you got a late red flag for a crash, if he's leading, would that call come in like, hey, the helicopter's ready, you got to get going soon? I think there's a lot to watch. I think this is going to be a really interesting Indy 500 to watch. Can't miss it.
I think we kind of fabricated this ourselves, but again, in the 30 years that guys have been trying to do this, I think only one guy's successfully done it. Tony Stewart in 01 to do all 1,100 miles. Yeah. So that alone is a massive achievement.